In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear outer brake flex hose on this Acura MDX. This will be located behind your rear wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've completed that, we're going to remove the wheel by removing all 5 of our 22mm lug nuts, and then we can get this off of here. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, let's pay a close attention to the caliper. On the caliper, you're going to have a bleeder screw, and we need to open the bleeder screw, ensuring it functions properly before you start removing your brake flex hose. Typically on your bleeder screw, you're going to find a small bleeder cover. This is just a protective cover. You want to go ahead and give it a quick squeeze, make sure it's soft and pliable. If yours is missing, you should replace it with a brand new one. Continuing on from there, we have a 10mm headed bleeder screw. Let's make sure we have a collection receptacle under this area. Turn this counterclockwise. Now we're waiting to see a steady trickle of fluid coming out of this. This tells me that we don't have an issue with the caliper bleeder screw. Now at this point, let's make our way up inside the passenger compartment. We have to hold the brake pedal all the way to the floor, and we'll hold it there with a pry bar up against the seat. Now that we have applied pressure on that brake pedal, we're holding it there. We can go ahead and close up this bleeder screw. We're just going to temporarily close it, so just a light amount of pressure. Make sure you have your collection receptacle under the rear of the caliper. Now we're going to remove the banjo bolt. This bolt goes through the flex hose into the caliper. When you go to remove this, it's probable fluid will make its way out of here. We'll use a 14mm for this banjo bolt. Pay close attention to the banjo bolt. On the very end here, I can see that I still have my pre-existing gasket on there. It's important to make sure you replace both of the gaskets on your flex hose. If there's one stuck on the banjo bolt, go ahead and remove it. Go ahead and give it an inspection and set it aside. Slide that off of there. We'll recycle that as necessary. Clean down the banjo bolt. Make sure it's not rotted or damaged in any way. If it looks like it needs to be replaced, you need to replace it. Now we can remove the flex hose from the back side of the caliper. We'll just give this a little wiggle. When you go to remove it, once again, we're paying attention for our gasket. If it's stuck on the flex hose, that's okay. We're replacing it. Otherwise, double check and make sure it's not on the back side of the caliper. You do not want to double gasket your braking system. I can see it right on there. I'm just going to use a small pick or a small screwdriver. Just pull that out of place. A quick inspection of the caliper here. Once again, if it looks like it's rotted or damaged, you definitely want to replace that. We'll just give this a quick wipe and a close inspection. Let's follow the flex hose all the way up to its mounting bracket up here. Now what you're going to notice along this area is the flex hose is connected to a steel brake line. It has a 10mm fitting. We'll be using a 10mm to break this free. Keep in mind, fluid may come out of this area as well. We have our collection receptacle under here for recycling the fluid. Careful not to break that line. Line's getting pretty loose now. Now once you have removed it, go ahead and give that fitting a close inspection. Make sure it doesn't look rotted and damaged. We'll also pay attention to the far end, the very tip of the brake line. Ensure that that's not rotted or damaged as well. Go ahead and set that aside. Continuing from here, we're going to remove the mounting clip holding the brake flex hose to the bracket. You can use some pliers for this. A quick inspection of that clip. You will be reusing it. We'll set that aside. Take hold of that flex hose and remove it from the vehicle. Now it's time to install our outer flex hose. We'll be paying attention to the end of the flex hose that screws onto that fitting that's part of the brake line. If you were to look at the base of it, you can tell that there's a flat, notched out area. We want to make sure we have that properly aligned with the mounting bracket. We'll slide this right on through the bracket. Before putting in our locking clip, we're going to start the line in. Just turn this as needed. Should press right in there. Now the reason why we want to start the line in before the clip is so we can move things around as necessary. We can move the flex hose if we need to. We can also move the line. Now typically you want to make sure you start this in by hand. It's common for that fitting to be stuck on the line, and you can really only spin it with a wrench. If that's the case, just be extremely careful with your wrench. You do not want to cross thread this into the wrong position. There we are. Now that I have it started in, I'm going to start in that mounting clip. For this, we're just going to slide it right down into the groove that's on the flex hose. Tap it into place. Make sure it's locked in. Let's tighten up that brake line fitting. So right there is bottomed out. We're only going to take this a tiny bit further. We want to ensure that the brake line is seated to that brake hose. Double check to confirm that you're completely situated here, and now we can follow the rest of that flex hose down to the caliper. When you go to install this, we're going to take our banjo bolt, install one of our brand new crush gaskets on there. Once you have one of the gaskets on the banjo bolt, we'll slide that right on through the flex hose. With that pressed through the flex hose, it's time for the next crush gasket. We'll slide it right on the opposite side of the flex hose. At this point, you can see that there's one on each side, sandwiching it in. Let's take this and get it in position along the back side of the caliper now. We'll start in the banjo bolt by hand, bottom it out, torque this to 25 foot-pounds. Double check to make sure this is seated properly and secured. Before we can bleed the brake, we want to remove our pry bar from that brake pedal. And also, we're going to make our way under the hood to the master cylinder. We'll take hold of the cap, turn it counterclockwise, remove it a quick inspection here, and we're just going to set it right on the top of the master cylinder, making sure it's not completely sealed, but we do want to make sure nothing can fall inside the braking system. Let's start gravity bleeding the system now. We're back at the caliper bleeder screw. We have our collection receptacle under here. We're going to open up the bleeder screw and allow fluid to start making its way out. Typically, you're going to see a whole bunch of air bubbles making their way out at the same time at first because we did replace that brake hose. Once you see a steady stream of fluid, we'll go ahead and close this bleeder screw and we'll have to continue on with a manual brake bleed. Got my 10mm. Okay, at this point we have a steady trickle of fluid coming out of here. Let's go ahead and close this down and complete a manual brake bleed. With that said, we'll be starting at the master cylinder here. We need to remove as much of the fluid from in here as possible, replace it with brand new DA3, and then we'll start bleeding the brakes. Continuing from here, we're going to remove the screen from inside of the master cylinder. Once we have that pulled up and out, we can start removing the fluid. Now, when removing the screen, I'm going to use a small pick. We don't want to cause any damage, but when we pull it out, we need to ensure that the brake fluid does not make its way onto anything inside the engine compartment, especially the paint on your vehicle. Just pull this up and out of here. Drain out as much of that fluid as possible that's in there. Just a quick inspection of the screen and we'll set that aside temporarily. Now I'm going to use my fluid extractor to remove the fluid. Try to get in there as far as possible. Before adding our fluid, let's reinstall our screen in the area. Just press that right down into position. Got our brand new DA3 brake fluid here. We'll top this off. We'll reinstall the cover here. Turn that clockwise. Let's make our way to the passenger side rear. Now we can start bleeding the brakes. We need to make sure we have our collection receptacle handy, and this is going to be easiest with a second person. What we need to do is have the second person inside of the vehicle go ahead and pump up the brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Once it's firm, they're going to let me know they're holding it. I'm going to open up the bleeder screw, and we'll be paying attention to the fluid making its way out. We want to see only clean brake fluid making its way out, no dirty fluid, and definitely no air bubbles throughout this process. You may have to repeat the process several times. Go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, please. Got our wrench on here. You can see a little bit of air making its way out of there. Go ahead and pump, please. Go ahead and pump. One more time. You can release the brake pedal, thank you. Let's remove this. Clean our mess, reinstall your bleeder screw cover. Let's make our way back up under the hood. We're going to double check that master cylinder. As you can tell, after bleeding the brake, it is low. Top it off with our .3. Once you're sure it's full up to the maximum, go ahead and reinstall your cover. Double check, make sure it's secure, clean up your mess. One last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Start on all 5 of your 22mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out. Get the wheel safely back down on the ground and torque each of these to 94 foot-pounds. We've got the wheel back on the ground. We'll torque these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished the installation of our brake hose. At this point, you want to go ahead and make sure you pump up the brake pedal till it's nice and firm, and then take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.